if anyone was new to me, you're very welcome, and let's get started. So you've got the chat, as usual. Feel free to use it. Ask me any questions. I might know or I might not know, but I'll try. And let's go. Let me flip this. And no, Laurie, Streamlabs has not fixed anything. I've moved to a different platform. I'm streaming from Prism at the moment. I had enough of the bug, so yeah. And so far it's looking quite promising. Anyway, let's go. So we are here in front of this beautiful building. This is the Royal College of Surgeons, that at the time of Henry VIII used to be called the Royal College of Barbers and Surgeons, because at the time barbers used to do mini surgery as well. And I wanted to start here because in a few of my tours we have spoken about body snatchers before. You know, those grave robbers that were going to steal the dead bodies for the anatomist. And I didn't want you to think that those guys were isolated criminals stealing bodies for the sake of it. This is a very well organized and disgusting trade, really repulsive, but actually very much needed. And the body snatchers, they worked very closely with the Royal College of Surgeons. And there was actually a season for body snatching because of the students. The students in anatomy, they didn't have lessons in the summer. And anyway, keeping dead bodies in the summer was a bit harder because of the temperatures. You know, they were basically rotting a bit early. So we had those body snatchers. Stealing bodies in a grave was not the only way to acquire a dead body. Sometimes they would also get some mourning ladies. You know, those professional mourners, they were ladies that were paid to go and cry at the funerals. And sometimes the body snatchers and the surgeons would use those ladies to send them to the workhouses. So what they'll do is they'll go to a workhouse and they'll be crying and they'll be like, "Oh, I heard my dear great uncle died in here yesterday at the Lambeth workhouse." And then the staff would be like, "Oh, I'm ever so sorry. What's his name?" And they'll be like, "Alex." And they'll be like, "Oh, would you be able to repeat that, please?" Alex. And they would be like, "Oh, did you just say Alex Dunberwick?" "Yeah, I'm sorry, he's passed away. When can you collect the body?" It was that simple, you know, because otherwise the workhouses, they had to pay for the funeral cost anyway. So, you know, stealing them from their graves were not the only way to acquire bodies. Apart from that, if you wanted to get them legally, they often would get them from the executions. But the executions, if we talk about, for example, the very beginning of the 19th century, there would be maybe 50 a year in London, but they were executed in batches at the time of the Tyburn, for example, there would be like a few hanged a day, and sometimes you would have weeks without bodies. And that's what created a need for those stolen bodies, because they were the only bodies really given to science. And luckily, you know, pregnant women, for example, they were never hanged, almost. And kids, luckily, they were hardly ever hanged. No, Tina, this is not the British Museum. This is the Royal College of Surgeons. We'll finish the tour by the British Museum. Yeah. And so yeah, those surgeons, they used those stolen bodies, but there was a need for it. You know, to give you an idea, a student in medicine would need to graduate at least 3 full bodies to dissect. You know, so and also the body snatchers, apparently sometimes they even got a bit of holiday pay, because you know, through the summer there was no need for bodies, but some of the most prolific body snatchers, sometimes apparently they had a deal and the surgeons would give them a bit of money to survive through the summer. And it is also the site of the Hunterian Museum. And guess what? It has finally reopened. I've not had a chance to come here since, but it is the largest collection of anatomical and different species collection. So this is the type of items you can find. Let me show you some more, these type of things. It is mainly the collection of John Hunter. So the Hunter brothers, you had John and William Hunter. I got. John was the little brother. So they were two brothers. And they were very influential, very good doctors, the both of them actually. So the Hunterian Museum in Glasgow, it's more the collection of William Hunter, and the one here is more the collection of John. John was let's say, quite controversial man. One of the main exhibits here at the museum used to be, because they've decided not to put him back apparently, used to be the body of a giant called Charles Byrne. He was from Ireland originally, and he was over, well, there are different accounts of his exact height, but we believe 7'7". And even when he was still alive, he was fully aware that the body snatchers were going to want his body. The surgeons wanted the body. Actually, John Hunter told him when he was still alive that he wanted to buy his body. And of course, Charles didn't want to. Charles wanted to be buried like anybody else. And as his health deteriorated, he decided to organize his own funeral just to make sure his body couldn't be stolen. So he planned to be buried at sea. So he actually paid a little fisherman in Margate to take his body away and dump it at sea. Unfortunately, when he actually died, John Hunter made a deal with one of his friends, one of Charles's friends, to know the location of the body, and he stole it before he could be taken to Margate. He was then dissected, his bones were boiled, and the skeleton was on display here for many, many years. When they closed with COVID. Then there was a big discussion on whether we should still have this skeleton on display, because clearly it was not his wishes. The guy wanted to be buried. They have recently decided not to expose him back. So that's good, but they are not burying him either. So at the moment, if you're keeping it, you might as well expose it, Maybe one day we'll put him back where he wants to be. We'll put him in the sea. Who knows? And, they've done everything. They've taken the DNA. They've done all the tests they might want to do. We could bury him, it's his body. But hey-ho. John Hunter, by the way, I don't want to give him a bad rep. I mean, he was a very courageous doctor. He was studying babies a lot and pregnant ladies. He was actually accused of stealing the bodies or actually killing pregnant ladies to be able to study. Probably not true, but the bodies of pregnant ladies were really hard to acquire. And he actually studied the blood, the blood system. They actually proved that the blood system of the baby was not the same as the one of the mother. And he's also performed the first artificial insemination in the 18th century. So that's quite impressive. And also, this is yet to be confirmed, but he was basically wrongly believing that gonorrhea and syphilis were the same disease. And to prove it, he actually injected a third party with the pus from gonorrhea on their penises. And it was actually a mistake because it was probably contaminated and basically it didn't work. But then he never really stated who the third party was. And people actually believe that it might have been himself. So the guy was ready to contaminate himself with gonorrhea and potentially syphilis to for the sake of science. So, a great man of science, really. And he was actually trained by his bigger brother, William. Anyway, on a house on this side here, apparently at some point, Nell Gwyn lived. So Nell Gwyn, I'm sure most of you would have heard of her. She was one of the many mistresses of Charles II, the merry monarch. And she was a very witty, very funny lady. She was quite proud of her background in the sex trade. Her mother used to have a brothel, and heroic experiment exactly, Andre. Yeah. And yeah, she was very witty. Apparently, one day the king came to visit his bastard son. You know, he had an illegitimate son with Nell. And at some point, the little boy is running away, and Nell said, "Oh, come here, you little bastard." The king was shocked. He was like, how dare you call him a bastard, you know? And Nell said, well, as far as I know, that's exactly what he is, you know? You've not given him any titles yet. So that's how the king created the dukedom of St. Alban, a title that still exists today. All of that thanks to Nell. Anyway, let me show you this building. And a house on this side here used to live Spencer Percival. Spencer Percival was a prime minister that was assassinated 1812, and he was basically gunned down in a room in the Houses of Parliament by a greengrocer from Liverpool. The guy blamed him for the failure of his business. Anyway, what interests me, it's not the murder so much, it is actually the premonition. There was a little man, well, not a little man, a normal man, you know, a peasant, that lived in Cornwall in a place called Redchurch. He had a dream, a very specific dream. He dreamt that he was in some kind of a grand building, and he saw this man in a grey coat, a brown coat, very important, a brown coat, getting a gun out, shooting a little man in a blue coat. And he asked, "Who's that?" And someone said, "It's Percival Percival, yeah, exactly, John. Exactly, Kurt, I mean, John, yeah." He said, "That's I cannot say it, Spencer Percival." And apparently he had this dream several times, so he was like, "Oh, and I need to run to London. I need to, not run, but jump on his horse, you know, and tell Parliament, you know, tell the king, tell everyone what was about to happen." And his friends, and apparently it's documented, his friends said, no, don't do it. You know, they'll think that you're plotting. You know, they'll think that it's you. They'll think you're plotting against the prime minister. So he never did go. And when he heard exactly what happened, and apparently it was true to the colors of the jackets were actually correct, he was, of course, ever so sorry, you know, because if he had gone to London, maybe he could have stopped it. So yeah, interesting dream. And we have a house here. You're not going to be able to read, but you can see the little blue plaque. That is for a gentleman called William Marsden. He was a surgeon. And I'm actually glad he's here, because he's, well, I don't want to give you a bad image of the surgeons, you know, because they, you know, when I go for surgery today, luckily it's not very often, but when I do go, I'm very glad that the surgeons have the knowledge that they have. And, you know, if we didn't have all those stolen bodies, they probably wouldn't, you know, it was a repulsive trade, but very, very much needed. And, you know, Marsden was a surgeon at the beginning of the 19th century, so he probably himself was involved with some stolen bodies and all that. Welcome, Rose. And he actually was a great doctor himself. Well, the story goes that one night he walked in front of the church here in Holborn, where he spotted a little poor girl. Did Percival himself had dreams? Oh, interesting. I didn't know. So yeah, he spotted a little girl that was dying of starvation, and he actually couldn't save her. At the time you couldn't really get admitted into hospital. You didn't have such things. You had those infirmaries at the workhouses, but hospitals were not free. And the little girl passed away, and then he dedicated the rest of his career really to creating free hospitals. So he created the Royal Marsden Hospital that did a lot in cancer research as well, and the Royal Free Hospital. So in a way, a bit of a precursor to the NHS today. So amazing surgeon. Anyway, let's go and see something a little bit more exciting. Let's go and see a pub. So the pub is called The Ship. Very often, when you have a proper old pub in London or in the UK, if they are called The Ship, you can bet that before the Reformation, they might have been called The Ark. Before the Reformation, so for the ones that don't know, the Reformation, it's when Henry VIII literally changed the religion of the religion of the full country to create the Church of England. And before that, a lot of pubs had actually some very Catholic names like the St. Peter's or the Ark. And to please the king, wonder what he'd think of the NHS today. Well, yeah, but the cost of medicine is going so far up. It's very, very different from, but yeah, today it's a bit of a crisis, really. Let me try to put it in sepia. That would look quite cool. How did I do this earlier? So yeah, a lot of those pubs would have changed their names basically to please the king. So a lot of the pubs got very royal names like the king of this, the duke of that, or names related to hunting. This one was already named The Ship, because this one literally dates back to the time of the Reformation. So that's 1549, this pub. And guess what? It is haunted. There's a story here of a ghost, a happy ghost apparently. What happened is that they used to have patronized by Chevalier d'Eon. I might do a tour about Chevalier d'Eon one day. We never actually spoke about him in my tours, so maybe one day. What were we saying? So yeah, they used to do illegal masses. When we changed the religion of the country, some people wanted to practice their original faith, that was Catholicism. So apparently the priests, they used to hide in some pubs. And this was one of them. So they used to do illegal masses in the pubs. They had some lookouts. So you had those people at the street corner checking for any of the king's official. And Gregory, it's not that Protestant didn't believe in Noah. It's that the pubs that had religious names moved on to something less religious to please the king. So they moved on to just more classic names, yeah. And so that's why they had those illegal masses, and often they got caught, and then they would hide the priest in a hidey hole. So whenever the king's official were arriving, the guys would run back to the pub, tell everyone in there, hide the priest, and apparently in this little pub, The Ship, they were never caught. So some claim that it might be why they had the happy ghost. Let me try to put the colors back to normal. That was just for fun. There we go. Right, so before we go to our next spot, really, I need to tell you a bit more about what happened with the Civil War. So basically, to cut the story short, at the oh, you like Chevalier d'Eon? Well, we should do a tour about him one day. So so for the ones that don't know, Chevalier d'Eon was a spy. He was one of the well, one of the first well-documented transgenders of history, really, or transvestile, it depends how. But yeah, a fascinating story. But anyway, back to the Civil War. So yeah, at the beginning of the 1600s, we started to have a lot of Puritans. The Puritans, of course, they believed they could deal straight with God. They believed that there was no need for bishops or archbishops or head of the church. The problem is that in this country, the head of the church is the monarch. So going against the head of the church was going against the king anyway. The king on the throne at the time was Charles the First. He was a bit too keen on his divine powers of king. He annoyed Parliament. We had a civil war. We had the parliamentarian against the royalists. They accused the king of treason. And well, no one believed it was going to happen, but it did. They executed Charles I. So Oliver Cromwell took the power for about 10 years. When he died, he wanted his son to take the power after him, but his son didn't really have the same personality. And so eventually Charles II was put back on the throne, and we went back to having a constitutional monarchy. But when Charles II accessed the throne, he was shocked to find out that Oliver Cromwell, the guy that literally signed the death warrant for the murder of, well, he saw it as murder, but the execution of his dad, the guy had been buried in Westminster Abbey like a king. So for Charles, that was unacceptable. So he had them executed. So some of the people involved were still alive, they were hanged, and some of them were dead, like Cromwell and two of the judges. So those bodies were exhumed. They were taken out of their graves, already dead, 2 years. Well, at least for Cromwell, it was 2 years, and they took them out, and 3 of them. So. Cromwell and two of the people that signed the death warrant of the king, their bodies were taken into a pub here. A pub called the Red Lion. We're not gonna go all the way to the pub because it was moved. It's not the original one. But the bodies had a night to spend in the pub before to be hanged the next morning. Hanged, drawn and quartered. They were already dead, but to symbolically kill them again. And so this is Red Lion Square, and guess what? It is said to be haunted. What has been gossip for many, many years is that through that night at the pub, the bodies might have been swapped. Some of the parliamentarians might have gone to a cemetery or a graveyard and stolen 3 random bodies, and they might have replaced the 3 bodies in the pub by the random bodies, taking, of course, the actual body of Oliver Cromwell and the 2 judges to bury them here. There's absolutely no evidence of any of that. It's probably all rubbish, but since that day, they say that this little square is haunted. People, yes, exactly, Kurt. People claim that they've seen 3 silhouettes at night. Who knows? And so what happened to the body of Cromwell, we don't really know. He was, so officially it's his body, he was taken to the Tyburn, he was hanged, drawn and quartered. Apparently it took 8 blows to sever his head, which is quite a lot for a body that's already dead. And what happened to his body is very much debatable. There's a story, some say that he might have been buried in Abney, before it even became a cemetery in Abney Park today, but in this area. Some say that he might have been buried in Chiswick. I might have told you the story of the short coffin in Chiswick Church. We don't know. So we don't know what happened to his body, but we certainly know what happened to his head. So I'm going to tell you the story, the 300 years story of Cromwell's head. Now bear with me, I'm going to have to focus here because I'm gonna have to cross outside of the foot cross basically. So usually I try to be a good girl on my tours, but there are some work, so they've closed the foot cross. Let's do this. So yeah, his head was taken down from the scaffold, and not the scaffold, the beheading place, and they put it on a spike on the building of Westminster, the Great Hall. And it was there for many years, and one day with a storm, the head actually fell off and flew away. It rolled down on the streets, and apparently there's a guard that picked it up. The guard actually took it home. He didn't know what to do with it, so he took it home. The king on the throne at the time was James II, so he was the brother of Charles II. So for him, the head of Cromwell was still fairly important, because it was, of course, the head of the guy that murdered his dad. And he offered a reward on whoever was going to bring that head back. A lot of money. The guard that took it, of course, didn't really have the balls to bring the head back, because he would then have to admit what he had done with it, really. So he never did. And eventually, the head ended up in a museum. And sorry, I'm laughing because I actually put the biscuit face filter, but that didn't work. It's too dark. They didn't recognize their faces. Anyway, so he for the ones that don't know, there's a filter on this app. I can put biscuit faces on people's faces. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah, the head ended up in a little museum. Until 1737, people could go into the museum and see Cromwell's head. And then, eventually, after the museum closed, the head was sold to a guy called Russell, which ironically was a cousin of a relative, let's say, of Cromwell. And Russell exposed it at parties. So he had some kind of big dinner parties, and he literally passed the head from people to people as some kind of an attraction, and he actually damaged it a little by doing that. And then eventually the head was sold to a jeweler called James Cock. I found different amounts, so something above £30,000 today, but I don't know the exact amount because I keep finding different figures. And that guy sold it to 3 men. We are now in Victorian times. They were involved in freak shows. You know, Victorian times, they had those horrible freak shows. They were somehow using, sadly, people with disabilities, or doing fake mermaids. You know, they'll take half a fetus and half a fish to make a mermaid. This type of horrible shows. And they somehow believed that the head of... oh, look, they forgot to turn the light off, so you can actually see that there's a basement here that probably goes down to the tunnel, the Kingsway Tunnel. So those guys believed that it was a good investment, the head of Cromwell, but actually not that much. In Victorian times, people didn't really care about the head that much, so they didn't make much money out of it. And the head ended up in the possession of one of those guys' daughter, and she sold it. She sold it to a family, the Wilkinson family, and they kept it for many years, from generations to generations, and eventually, in the 1930s, let me show you the Wilkinson gentleman. In the 1930s, they decided to run some tests on the head. So there's a group of scientists that had a look, and they came up positive. They were convinced it was indeed Cromwell's head. Of course, there was no DNA at the time, but the hair color was right. The head had been cut off after death, And he had his famous, so the skin was still there, some kind of leathered skin, and he had a wart on his face, a famous wart, so the wart was there. So they concluded that it was indeed the right head. And eventually, in the 1960s, finally, the Wilkinson family decided to do the most logical thing to do with a head. They decided to bury it. So finally, Cromwell's head has been buried somewhere in Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge. So finally, the head can rest in peace. And so that was the 300 years of I was trying again to do the biscuits, but I think it's too dark. The app doesn't recognize the faces at this time. Oh well, next time. Let me show you here. That is the Kingsway Tunnel. I'll try to pop my phone into the railings. Bear with me. There we go. So this was, would you believe, for the trams. Because we used to have trams in London. Not so much anymore. But back in the days, the trams were, well, London was fully covered with a tram network. Apart from Chelsea and Westminster, really, because the trams were the transportation for the poor, and Chelsea and Westminster boroughs, they were always way too posh for that. But the rest of London was very much mapped, and to tell you a bit more about the story of the trams, they started in Victorian times with horses on rails, and when they invented electricity became better, because then you didn't need the horses anymore, and the trams company, they had to deal with the horse manure anyway, so it was better. And eventually, after the First World War, the metal for the railings, the tracks, they were kind of running out of metal. Metal became very expensive after the war effort. So they got rid of the tracks, and they had it on wheels, still electrics, but on wheels. And eventually, when they created the Routemasters, you know, those famous double-deckers we have today, they got rid of the trams, which is a shame. We keep talking about bringing them back. I'd love to. I like trams, but it never happens. Apart from Croydon. In South London, far south, there's a tram. The Elephant Man, Linda, yes, that's the type of shows that they would do, those horrible freak shows. They would often use people like the Elephant Man, or people with conditions like acromegaly. Actually, Charles Byrne, the giant we mentioned earlier, probably suffered from acromegaly as well. He was also himself involved in some kind of shows. It's very sad, but in a way, some people suffering from disabilities manage to make a living out of it. Because of course, at the time we didn't have any other type of financial helps, apart from charity, of course. So yeah, it was a rough time. You know, I think if we could go back, we'd be shocked, you know, by people's behaviors. And I'm gonna try the biscuit face again. Let's see. I want someone to come out of the shop. And anyway, let's head towards the British Museum. It's too dark. It's not recognizing people's faces. Oh well, next time. Go towards the British Museum. Let me take this off. That could be very handy, because you know, sometimes I feel embarrassed when there are kids around. I don't want to be filming kids, so I can just put the biscuit face on, and then the kids' faces wouldn't show up. We'll just have biscuits. So that's quite convenient if you have to go towards a playground or a school or anything like that. YouTube doesn't like kids anyway. I mean, it doesn't want kids on your videos, so that'll be quite convenient. Anyway, so the British Museum, the collection was actually started by a gentleman called Hans Sloane. He was a physician from Ireland, and should we cross? Yes, let's do it. And he collected the world. He collected anything like fossils, rocks, anything on everything. And he lived here at some point. He let me see if I can use the flash, if it does anything. Oh yeah, a little something. That's quite cool. See, I've got a flash as well. Whoop whoop. That was not available on Streamlabs. So yeah, he basically he collected everything, plants and items, and he after his already before his passing, he had already opened some kind of a mini museum for his friends by Sloane Square, and when he died, he wanted to donate. It wasn't really donated, but to give his collection to the nation. So they had to look for a place to host his massive collection. They looked at several buildings. They even considered a building in Westminster, a large house by the area of St James's, called Buckingham House. Yeah, you might see where I'm going with that. It later on became Buckingham Palace. So things could have been different. It could have been the British Museum at Buckingham House. And eventually they settled on a place here called Montague House. So that was the beginning of the British Museum. And the collection was later on divided. Some of the books went to the British Library. Some of the fossils or bones might have gone to the Natural History Museum. And I think it's interesting to remember the very reason why Hans was able to collect everything like this. It's also because he had money, and basically a lot of his money came from slavery. Not directly, but his father-in-law was in slavery. It's not unusual for a man of his times, but yeah, I think it's important to remember. It's interesting because the British Museum is kind of, according to me, I think they kind of shy away from this part of their history. When the British Library, they expose it. They actually talk about it on in their hall. There's a little thing about it. So two very different attitudes. Anyway, so let me give you a few fun facts about the British Museum. First, it was one of the first buildings to be lit up with that takes the cookie, and you should stop flashing on the streets. So first it used to be it was one of the first buildings to have electricity, because before that they did not want to have any gas lamps or any oil lamps, so they would close at dusk because the collection was so valuable. Of course, they didn't want any fire. There also used to be a train station called the British Museum until the 30s, when they opened Holborn. It was too close, so they decided to stop it. They had a cat. They had a cat with the security. His name was Mike, and he lived nearly 20 years. He was helping the security. He was helping them, mainly getting rid of the pigeons. And they also had a porn room. Yes, you've heard this right, a porn room. What they called at the time a cabinet of obscenity. So that was every item that looked a bit, a little bit titillating, let's say. And ladies were actually forbidden for a few months at the time of the suffragettes. Well, they were not forbidden completely. They were allowed if they were accompanied by a man, because of course the suffragettes they had been destroying paintings at the National Gallery, and they had been bombing letterboxes and stuff. So they wanted, of course, the collection to be safe. And so yeah, quite an interesting building and one of the most interesting stories at the British Museum. It is the story of the cursed mummy. The cursed mummy, according to the British Museum, she's not cursed. She's the unlucky mummy. The story behind her, well, first, I call her a mummy. In some version of the story, they call her a mummy, but it's not actually a mummy. It's a coffin lid. I'll show you the photo in there. So it's a coffin lid that came from Thebes in Egypt. They found it there in the 1880s. 3 gentlemen found it in Thebes, and one of them, the next day, had a gunshot accident. He lost an arm. A second one disappeared by the Nile. The third one was so scared of the curse that he sold the mummy. And after that, they say, that's what the press was publishing at the time, that the 3 subsequent owners died. Very mysterious circumstances. And then the mummy, so-called mummy, but again, it's not a mummy, it's a coffin lid. There's no dead body there, or not anymore. Was sold to a collector in Streatham, and she was uncomfortable with it. She wanted to get rid of it, but first she wanted to have it photographed. So she commissioned the photographer to take a photo, and apparently when the photograph was developed, it looked like a human soul. Whatever that looks like. I don't know what that's meant to look like. But yeah, that was published in the press at the time, you know. And eventually, she gave it to another collector. That lady did not die, but all her pets did. Now, that's when the story starts to become a bit too much, right? And apparently that lady was so scared of the curse that she actually gifted it to the British Museum. They say that when the porter started to take it up the stairs here at the museum, one of them broke his ankle. And that's when you're like, okay, that's a bit much, right? The people that actually sold that story to the press, they were 2 gentlemen, Thomas Douglas Murray, a fairly respectable Egyptologist, and a very remarkable journalist called William Stead. Now, if you followed some of my tours before, we've spoken about William Stead before. He was amazing. We talked about him when we talked about the age of consent. You know, sadly, in the early 19th century, the age of consent was 12 years old. Then William Stead, on his reporting on teenage prostitution, they raised it up to the age of 16 finally. So a remarkable journalist. He was actually nominated for a Nobel Prize. And in 1912, he embarked on a boat to go to America. Now, a boat going to America in 1912, that might ring a bell, the Titanic. Now, Stead did not survive the Titanic, he died. But some people did. And those people, apparently on board, they had been talking to Stead. And he told all of them that he was traveling with a cursed mummy. That the British Museum was so scared of the curse that they decided to gift it to an American collector. Yeah, it's the top of a sarcophagus, yeah, Mel. It's literally the lid. And so yeah, some say that the cursed mummy was on board of the Titanic and that she claimed another 1,500 souls. Now, we know this is rubbish. The lady with the pets that died, oops, I've lost you, let me move away. I think the connection has dropped. Let's see, is it any better now? I'm not gonna say anything interesting until it's back. Oh, I think we're back. Sorry, I've lost you for a sec. Yeah, so we know it's all rubbish because the lady with the pets, she has existed. They probably got inspired by a different story with a lady that indeed did lose her pets. And we know the Titanic did not have any mummy on board. All the cargo of the Titanic was recorded. There was no traces of a coffin lid, let alone a full mummy. And it's very much still here at the British Museum. So if you wanted to go and see it, it's in the mummies room. It is exhibit EA 2254-2. So it's certainly not on the Titanic. So yeah, the story was all made up, I'm afraid. Yeah, well, some part of it. Oh, I've lost you again. Let me move. Hopefully it's gonna be much better here. I don't know why. I usually have a decent signal here. So yeah, that was the story of the cursed mummy of the British Museum, which I'm afraid it's been fabricated for the press. It was published all over the press at the time, but we know now that it is not true. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me show you my face again. And let me know if you have any questions for me before we go. If not, thank you very much for coming today. Thanks, Sandrine. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Tina. Signal has been fine? Oh, did you not lose me for half a second? Because trying to reconnect or something. Oh well, good. It's good. It's better if they tell me too much than less. Because with Streamlabs, it didn't even tell me, so I wouldn't know. Sometimes I would be talking forever and then realizing that it had cut already. So far, I'm very happy with this app. Even unscrupulous journalists lost their mummies. Yes, and we all love a good story, whether it's true or not. Cool. So thank you for coming, guys. If you want to see a bit more of me, on Monday we're doing a Monopoly tour. We're heading to. Oh, it's telling me I'm losing you again. We're heading to Whitehall, and so you can expect some fairly expensive properties there. Am I going to do a tour in Paris? No, I'm not going to Paris. No, that's not planned. Cool. What did I miss? Cool, I don't see any more questions. So thank you for coming. Hopefully I'll see some of you on Monday. If not, I don't know how much I'm working at the end of the week, but I might try to take you to the Canary Wharf Light Festival again, like last year. We'll see. Not sure I can make it. And if any of you were completely new to me, hope I got you hooked. Hope I'll get you to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on the fun next time. And if any of you dropped me a little tip on buy me a coffee on PayPal, you very much appreciated. I don't see them live, so I cannot thank you live, but make sure you know you very much appreciated. It is thanks to you that I can keep on creating new tours and doing research and all that. So thank you very much. And I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna let you go. Have a good evening, a good morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. No, you go.